Today I present for you the 1966 Japanese hit song いい湯だな The Water Feels So Good, translated into English. 今日は、1966年に、リリースされたいい湯だなのという歌の、英語訳を提供します。So I performed the song in the shed with my wife and daughter. 後ろの車庫で、妻と娘と一緒に演奏しました。After the song is done, I'll do a short history of the song and context of the song. その後、英語で、この歌の、歴史とか、この歌の話をします。はい、どうぞ。
Feels so good. Oh, it feels so good. I feel a cold drop on my back as the steam falls from the roof. And it feels so cool. Yeah, it feels so cool. I'm in the North Country. Nobody bets you and it's gonna get you. The water feels so good. Yeah, it feels so good. Who is that singing that? Yagi Bushi. They make it sound so easy, and it sounds so sweet. Yeah, it sounds so sweet. Even in Joshu Kusatsu, getting my body warm through. So good. Oh, it feels so good. Who is that hazy figure coming through the white mist? It could be her, it could be her, it could be her. Oh, it could be her. Right here in Okishu, Shirahama, maybe there's someone who loves you, but it feels so good. Yeah, it feels so good. I feel so Japanese. Feels like I should be singing Naniwa Bushia in a low, low groan. In a low, low groan. In the South Country, in Beppu in my birthday suit, forgetting me, forgetting you.
So early in the 1960s, radio announcer and personality Rokusuke A and composer Izumi Taku had the pretty ambitious idea that they would go around Japan and write a song about each of the different prefectures, each of the different areas of Japan. So a pretty ambitious kind of fun, little bit wacky idea, which made me think of half a century later the songwriter Sufjan Stevens, who had a similar idea with America, that he'd go around and make an album about for each of the states of America. Now the big difference between the two projects is that Rokusuke A and Izumi Taku actually went out and did make 42 songs about all the different areas, whereas Sufjan Stevens, I believe, has only done 2 albums so far and kind of forgot about that project. But Rokusuke A and Izumi Taku weren't pulling this idea of writing a song about different areas just out of thin air. There's actually a tradition in Japan of doing that, of writing songs for specific areas, and they're called gotochi song. So there's actually quite a few of these out there. So they're following on in this tradition, but doing it on a grander scale. Of course, the idea of writing about your hometown or a specific area is a pretty natural thing for songwriters to do. I think of Woody Guthrie, who had the idea that you should write what you see, so you got to write what's around you. And of course, what you see is where you live, really. And Japan has this very strong identity with their different areas and different towns and villages. Anyone that's done much travel through Japan will know that wherever you go, there's a specific sort of noodle that you eat here, or a place where they're famous for their pears or for a specific fruit. And they have very specific local identity. So the idea of writing songs about that is pretty natural. And Japanese culture also has a bit of a penchant for creating series of things within art. So you think of Hokusai's 36 views of Mount Fuji, or Hiroshige's 53 stations of the Hokkaido. So there's this idea of creating a series of things. So "いい湯だな" started out as one of these songs, one of these gotochi songs, but it is all about going in the bath. It first featured in the Kohaku Utagassen, which a lot of people may have seen is the big song competition that happens on New Year's Eve every year, and you have two teams of singers that battle it out, and there's always, pop stars that are current as well as older, more established artists that are part of it. So this song featured in the 19th year of the Kohaku Utagassen, and then there were three other songs from this series of songs that also appeared in several Kohaku Utagassen around that time. So the song was originally done by the Duke Aces, but it really became a huge hit phenomenon, really, when the Drifters did the song. And the Drifters had a show that ran in Japan called Hachiji Dayo Zenyin Shugo. It's 8 o'clock, everyone gather round. And this show ran for around a decade and a half. It went into the living rooms of 100 million Japanese people over 15 years, and they would do this song every episode, or a variation on this song. So there's really not many songs that have that sort of exposure to culture anywhere, really. So the Drifters, who made the song famous, were an interesting group. So the first thing you should know about them is that they supported the Beatles on the Beatles' iconic 1966 tour of Japan, albeit in a performance that I think lasted around a minute and a half. You can look up a video of that where they sort of play a song and then just all sort of collapse on the ground. It's quite weird. But the Drifters are somewhere between, I guess they're more known as a comedic group, although they started out more as a music group, but it sort of reflects the way entertainers of that time in Japan, but around the world really, were seen as more entertainers, not just someone that did music or just comedy. There was a lot more of a crossover. You can see that in television shows of the time. We have variety shows, even the Sullivan Show that the Beatles went on, where the Beatles would play, and then you'd have a dancer and a juggler and a comedian, and so everything was a lot more blended. And the Drifters are very much like that. They started out as music, became comedy, and quite ridiculous comedy. I think one parallel is maybe Monty Python, with these sort of skits that are quite outrageous and sometimes a bit surreal. One version of the Drifters even included the famous singer Sakamoto Kyu, who a lot of people will know from singing Ue o Muite Aruko, which was released in the West strangely under the name of Sukiyaki. The song was the first song from a non-European language to top the Hot 100 Billboard chart in America, which is quite an achievement. I think probably still the only Japanese song to have ever done it. So the song itself is an ode to how good it feels to just get into a nice hot bath, and it references quite a few famous onsen from around Japan. So there's Shirahamin, Kishu, and there's Beppu. So it references a whole lot of these onsen, and it really does show in Japanese culture just that the way they love getting in the bath so much, and that feeling of getting into the hot water. I often like to think that a Western way of enjoying water and a Japanese way of enjoying water are quite different. At least in my home country of Australia, we love going to the beach. We love to get into these rolling waves. We like body surfing or surfing or enjoying this rough water. Whereas Japanese people, when they go to the beach, they always look for the flat, no waves, something they can just relax in. And then the next level of that is getting into a hot spring or an onsen, where it's this hot water that you can just really relax in. So "いい湯だな," the water feels so good, really is an ode to that national cultural pastime. So it's quite beautiful. But of course, the feeling of getting into hot water and just loving it is universal, right? I love getting in a hot bath. I think anyone that's spent any time in Japan has really grown to love that whole tradition. Anyway, it's a beautiful song, and look up the original, and I'll post more of these little translations of songs from Japanese into English with a short description of them afterwards. So if you're interested, do hit subscribe and like, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.